The Las Vegas Raiders released their first unofficial depth chart, and we're going to be breaking it all down here on the Raiders Report. I'm Mitchell Renz, and what I want to do is take a bit of a deep dive looking at the offensive side of the football and on the defensive side of the football, and just giving you some of my biggest takeaways. And I think the first thing that a lot of people are going to notice is Jackson Powers-Johnson is not listed as a starter. Cody Whitehair is a starter there, and one question I've been asked, is this bad news for JPJ? We're going to break all of that down here on today's show. So first off, when you see the depth chart being released, one of the reasons why I usually show my graphics for depth charts is because just the way that we have everything built. But for the Raiders, as you can see, their first official offensive depth chart is with 12 personnel, 2 starting tight ends. No doubt about it. It's going to be a glaring thing there. I'll also say at the time that I'm recording this video, as you can see, you're going to see like Tamari Fox is going to be on that depth chart. Also, you're not going to see a receiver who the Raiders recently just signed, Dax Milne. So those are just some of the recent things that have happened around the Raiders. The first thing that I see that a lot of people are going to see is Aidan and Gardner Minshew both listed as the quarterback one. The reason why that I think that this is interesting is, one, we know that this battle is neck and neck, and the fact that this is the official, unofficial Raiders depth chart, this kind of makes me believe that Aidan could be the quarterback that ends up going out there and starts against the Vikings, because I said this, tie goes to AOC. AOC was the starting quarterback, QB1, entering the offseason. He was the guy entering training camp. I will admit, depending on who you follow and who you listen to reports are, it does sound like Minshew has the slight edge, but it's just something to look at. Both quarterbacks listed as the QB1. Let's go to the next thing here, and it's the 2 tight ends listed as starters. Like, when you hear Luke Getsy, Antonio Pierce talk about how much that this team is going to do 12 personnel, I don't know if a lot of people fully wrap their minds around it. Another, I'll say maybe unpopular opinion that I've had during my 53-man roster videos is saying that the Raiders are going to keep 4 tight ends, and I'm a believer that's going to be Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, Harrison Bryant, and Zach Gentry. Another thing that I've said is that you could see the Raiders using a little bit more of their tight ends as receivers because they don't quite have the depth at wide receiver. Yeah, we got Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. Outside of that, though, there's still a lot of unknown pieces, and just the fact that they put out the depth chart with 12 personnel as the starters, I think just really goes to show that this is the type of offense the Raiders are going to incorporate. It's going to be a difficult one, and I can't wait to see it come to fruition in the preseason and in the regular season. Now, I've been saying this for a while, y'all. I want you to help us get to 171,000 subscribers before the Vikings game. We only got a few days left here. I'm going to be live for this football game. We're going to be going up against our Vikings channel here at Chat Sports, but I need 367 more subscribers for us to hit this magic number here, 171. Think about it as 365. If you respect this show, if you love what we bring, and if you want to party with us this Saturday, make sure you subscribe, make sure those noties are turned on. Let's go to the one that, I think is going to get probably the most attention. I'll also say this has been a topic that I have discussed multiple times here on the show, and I'll be real with you, when you look at this depth chart, I'm not really surprised that Cody Whitehair was listed over JPJ, but the reason why for the ... is almost because I give it a little bit of an eye roll. Let's face it here. Cody Whitehair better not be the starting left guard for the Las Vegas Raiders, or it's not going to be it's not going to be a lot of fun going up against that Chargers defensive line week 1. When you see Whitehair being listed at left guard, I see a lot of people being like, is this bad news for JPJ? Should we hit the panic button out there? We also got to be able to face the facts of this. One, Powers-Johnson has been battling some sort of injury the entire offseason. He's been battling like multiple injuries. We had somebody out at training camp, shout out to Crash Dog, and he was told that he's battling a stinger. Like, the only reason why JPJ isn't listed as the starter in my book is simply because, one, of the injuries. The other reason is, Whitehair played 2 seasons with Luke Getsy, and that definitely means something to him. So to me, Whitehair over JPJ is bad news for the rookie, but it's also bad news for Raider Nation because if legitimately, and the only reason why I say this is because year in and year out, we think that we know exactly what's going to happen, maybe from a starter standpoint, or this player is going to be on the 53, this guy isn't. The silver and black have always thrown us a little bit of a curveball. Now, I believe in Antonio Pierce. I believe in what this organization is doing, and they're doing a lot of right things. but I do think it's bad news because, in a sense, right now, this gives me the interpretation that if the regular season were to start, Whitehair is going to be out there as your starting offensive guard. And he hasn't been good in camp, and he's a below-average OG. Like, that's just the fact of it. We were worried about Greg Van Roten last season. Greg Van Roten is an upgrade over Cody Whitehair. The only reason why I think that the Raiders legitimately signed him was because you want some of that extra depth at offensive guard, and he can also potentially play center if need be in an Andre James situations. But he fell in the draft. This is JPJ due to those injury concerns. This does make me a little bit nervous. And Getsy knows Whitehair from the past 2 seasons. Could those be the reasons? Could that be enough where, we're sitting here going right now saying, like, JPJ is going to be the starter. We don't need to hit that panic button. But what happens if they come out and they're like, yeah, Cody Whitehair is actually going to be the starting left guard for the Las Vegas Raiders? So this is going to be the pinned comment here on today's show, and this is where I want you to be honest with me. I think we got to do a better job as people being okay having unpopular opinions and just having an unpopular opinion, or even if you have an opinion, stick to it. Let's talk about it. That's what friends, that's what family do, and that's what we're going to do here on the Raiders Report. So give me a yes, give me your no. Do you want Cody Whitehair to start at left guard week 1 for the Raiders? My answer is no. Tuck rule, tuck that. If I got to look at the first game of the season and I see Cody Whitehair trotting out there onto the field at left guard, I'm going to be pissed off, point blank, period. And I'm going to be upset not because of what Whitehair has and has not done. I will say this, though. I feel like I'm going to be pulling out all my hair. I'm going to be looking like Cody Whitehair, or hell, I might just have white hair. It's going to be a long game. What we cannot have yet again is either Aidan O'Connell, Gardner, Minshew in a situation in a regular season game where they're fighting for their lives and Khalil Mack's going to have potentially 6 sacks. The only way Jackson Powers-Johnson doesn't start in my book in this game is if he's injured or if they're just really not confident in him. But they are confident in him. They like him a lot. He's just got to stay healthy. Quite frankly, hell, I'd rather move Thayer Munford to left guard, and then you let the rookie DJ Glaze start at right tackle. That's how much I do not want Whitehair to be playing in the game. So, like, if we're sitting there with Getsy, I'm sitting down with offensive line coach James Craig, they look at Mitch, they look at Chugs and I, and they go, hey, what would be your offensive line if JPJ's unable to go? This is the offensive line I would roll with. You cannot afford to start Cody Whitehair at offensive guard for the Las Vegas Raiders at all this season. Let's go to the next reaction here on the depth chart. It's Dylan Laube being listed as the RB4. And, there was some speculation out there from Vic Tafer that Amir Abdullah was still had the upper hand and that Laube was just trying to get some extra work just to see what he had. I'm not going to believe it. Yeah, they might still put Amir Abdullah down there as the running back 4, but Laube is clearly better. They have already been using him a little bit with the ones and passing situations. I know what the depth chart says, but I'm telling y'all this right now. Laube is not the running back 4. The final thing that I had to take away is Ramel Keyton is just way too low on the depth chart. And I think when you look at the depth chart from a wide receiver standpoint, because they have it as 12 personnel and only 2 starting wide receivers, where most depth charts show it as 3, where it's like the guy on the left, the guy on the right, and then as the slot receiver, Keyton is listed as like your 4th string wide receiver, way too low. The UDFA out of Tennessee has really been impressing, especially over the past week, and actually got some run with the 2nd string group. Davante Adams has been away from training camp, getting ready for his baby boy, which I'm recording this video on Tuesday, just so all y'all know. So if he ends up having the baby when you guys see this video later on, just keep that in mind. Also, Jacoby Myers has been out there balling. Trey Tucker's had some drop issues. And then outside of Devontae and Jacoby, every other wide receiver on this team has something to prove. Ramel Keyton has really stepped up. And quite frankly, I think if the 53-man roster day was today and the team had to get down to 53 players, I think Keyton would end up actually making this squad. Coming up next here on the show, let's get into some of these takeaways from the defensive side of the football, where there might be more drama, more rumors around the offensive side because there's a lot more unknowns in that Getsy offense. But defense, to me, with this depth chart, I expect the defense to be one of the best, if not the best in the league. So I was really intrigued to see how some of these players ended up falling on that depth chart. Now, before we get into that again, huge shout out to our sponsor, Rocket Money. I like saving money, and quite frankly, I've been trying to save up for a wedding, a bachelor party, which I saved up for. That was a lot of fun. Been saving up for, man, all sorts of stuff. Home. Chuck's also not too cheap either. But Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. With Rocket Money, I have full control over my subscriptions and a clear view of my expenses. I can see all of my subscriptions in one place, and if I see something I don't want, Rocket Money can help me cancel it with just a few taps. Rocket Money has helped over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's features. So, Nation, what are you waiting for? Stop wasting money on things that you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/LV Raiders. That's rocketmoney.com/LV Raiders. And just in case you weren't paying attention, you can get all of your subscriptions on one screen. Stay on top of your upcoming bills. Let us cancel unwanted subscriptions for you. And how do you do that? By going to rocketmoney.com/LV Raiders. That link's going to be available to y'all down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. Be smarter and get started with Rocket Money. Let's go to the defensive side of the football now. Here's the first unofficial depth chart. And again, the Raiders, they waived Tamari Fox with injured. If he ends up clearing waivers, we'll see what ends up happening there. But the defense, there's a lot of depth, a lot of interesting moving parts around here from top to bottom. One of the first things that I noticed was the rookie, Trey Taylor, being listed behind Chris Smith. Because to me, I don't view Taylor as behind Smith. Now, maybe this is a situation where the Raiders are just trying to see a little bit more out of Smith during this preseason game. Is it, and jokingly, I'm going to say this, is this punishment for the whole Kermit the Frog incident? Like, I've talked to people in Taylor's family, and they hold Trey to such a high standard. The NFL, the Raiders, Air Force, you don't get named the Jim Thorpe Award winner just based on the play on the field. It's also off the field. And, Trey's just a standout guy. Maybe AP's just trying to be like, hey, man, actions come consequences, which I could see, like, my dad doing something like that when I was a kid. But, like, are the Raiders just trying to see a little bit more out of Smith? And if Smith is truly above Trey on that depth chart, then this team is no doubt keeping 5 safeties. Like, that's what I saw. That's what I feel, because you have Merrick. You're going to have Isaiah Palameo. You're obviously going to have, Epps as well. And then you're going to keep Chris Smith because you're not moving on from Taylor, who's already had a pretty good offseason. Let's go to the next reaction here on defense. Only middle linebacker and offensive outside linebacker listed, which kind of goes back to the whole 12 personnel system on offense. Like the Raiders listed 2 wide receivers and then 2 tight ends. One common thing that I just keep on saying on this show is I only see the Raiders going with 2 linebackers. I think it's going to be Divine Diablo. It's going to be Robert Spillane, and there's going to be some sort of a hybrid mixture in there. But Tommy Eichenberg is the guy listed as the backup to Robert Spillane. That does make a lot of sense to me. But when you look at the overall depth at LB, I wouldn't just look at the linebacker room. I would also look at how those linebackers can potentially impact this team from a special team standpoint. And because of that, you could look for Amari Burney to make an impact. Could a guy like Kenai Malga, Amari Gaynor, definitely guys to watch in this preseason. But the fact that they listed 2 linebackers just speaks volumes of. They're going to go 2 linebackers, and then they're going to put 5 DBs out there on the field. Really curious to see how they use Isaiah Palameo as well. Let's go to the next one here. It's Jakorian Bennett starting on our live show earlier in the week. I said it's very interesting that Max Crosby named Bennett as a breakout player, which the only way that you're breaking out is if you're starting. So the fact that it is now Jack Jones, Jakorian Bennett, Nate Hobbs, kind of the expected depth chart that we were going to see. But with Bennett, he's going to be battling with Camryn Richardson. And Richardson was listed as the backup to Jakorian, where Brandon Faison was listed as the backup to Jack Jones. So I really like that matchup. Kind of want to see how that one ends up unfolding. MJ Devonshire also listed as the backup to Nate Hobbs, which I thought was fun because he's an intriguing athlete. And I knew he was going to play a little bit on the inside at slot. But what's also interesting about this is we know that, when you draft somebody in the 7th round, maybe your expectations aren't as high. But if you're also going to list Devonshire as the backup to Nate Hobbs, Hobbs has dealt with plenty of injuries throughout his career. In fact, he's missed 10 games over the past 2 seasons. He's also technically, if Hobbs is healthy, he's out there playing, right? So last season, he played in 13 games, started in only 11. And we've seen Hobbs really struggle with some of these minor injuries, and if he's able to stay healthy, we're great. But do the Raiders actually trust Devonshire, where if Hobbs goes down, is it going to be Devonshire in there at the cornerback spot in the slot? definitely something that I'm going to look at, man. So how about this? Give me some Nate Hobbs predictions right now. How many games do you think that number 39 is going to play this upcoming season for the Silver and Black? The talent's there. Unbelievable player. We've also seen some guys kind of battle through injuries when they're in a contract year, which is what Hobbs is going to be doing this season. So down below, let me know in the comments section how many games you see Nate Hobbs playing this upcoming season for the Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously, I'm going to hope for all 17. I'll take 15 and above, though. Like, for the Raiders, and what question that I continuously get asked is, are they going to extend Hobbs? I would extend Hobbs at the end of the season. I'm not going to do it now because of these injury concerns, and I want him to go out there and kind of do it, kind of prove it, that he can do it for a full season. But I'll say this, if he plays 15 or above, I'm giving him an extension. If it's like 14 and below with a lot of these minor injuries starting to flare up, I don't know if the Raiders will truly give him that deal that we all want him to give. Let's go to the last one here, and it's Marquan McCall over Nesta, Jade, Silvera. We've talked about the defensive tackle depth on this roster for quite some time, and if the Silver and Black do decide to keep that 6 DT, who could it potentially be? Because Byron Young, Adam Butler, you're going to have your mixture of your other DTs that you're going to end up keeping. For me, though, I'm looking at Matthew Butler. Now you got to look at Marquan McCall, who is a monster of a human being at 6'3", 345, which he's actually lost like 40 pounds from where he was last season. So he's lost some weight. And then you got Nesta, Jade, Silvera. I think now when you're really looking at that 53-man, if the Raiders do want to keep 6 defensive tackles on this team to keep some fresh legs and kind of keep that rotating, you're going to have to look at Byron Young, Nesta, Jade, Silvera, and Marquan McCall all tied in together. Maybe Matthew Butler in that competition on top of that. We knew the defensive tackle group was deep. Maybe Marquan's a sleeper to end up making this squad here. Now, I appreciate all y'all tuning into the show, and hopefully everybody joins Jeremy Chugs and I. We're going to be having dinner in Las Vegas August 14th. It's literally right around the corner, less than a week away. 9 p.m. at Joel's Chop House inside of Ahern Hotel in Las Vegas. Make a reservation on an open table. Put in the notes section, Raiders Report. You're going to be able to get a discount. It is limited space, and the spots have been filling up very, very quickly. I've actually got a phone call with Joel. I'll have to talk to him sometime this week and see how many more spots we have available. Even if you can't make it on August 14th, though, if you ever want an awesome dinner experience, some great drinks as well, I love me some old fashions, you can make a reservation, put Raiders Report in the notes, and I promise you, he'll take care of you. If you need the address, it's down there below. So one more time here, here's my reactions to the depth chart. On the left side is my top biggest reactions to the offensive side of the football, and again, Cody Whitehair being listed over Jackson Powers-Johnson. I had a lot of people ask me, is it bad news? I don't really think it's bad news. I don't think it's great news. I'm more concerned about what it means for the Raiders if the season were to start. But let's face it, if JPJ is healthy, he better be the starter over Cody Whitehair. And then on the right side, probably the most intriguing one to me is Trey Taylor being behind Chris Smith. And I'm hoping that they're just trying to get a little bit more out of the Georgia product who was drafted by Ziegler and McDaniels, and that Trey Taylor is just going to continue to step up and show out for the Raiders during the preseason.